some minion types are not going to be in yet, and they're going to progressively be added. So it's going to be a very varied type of battleground schedule, which is really nice because we're going to continue to have that right up until about June. It's going to feel fresh playing Battlegrounds, and in June we get Diablo 4, so I'll see you guys in that one. Overall, I think it's great. They're also doing a playtesting event. I think we're not going to have like all the minion types, so it's a very limited, very casual playtesting event. I think it's pretty fair this time. And let's go over some of the cards. So just, you know, before I get too into it here, I wanna just, you know, say it off the bat. Just because a minion type is bad doesn't mean it's useless. You guys know this already that play Battlegrounds, of course. It's a case where while a minion type might be really bad, certain heroes play really heavily into certain minion types. So you have cases where, for example, in the last few patches, Nagas have actually been pretty weak. Some of the worst builds in the meta have been Naga builds. Does that mean Naga builds are bad? Yes. But actually, some of the heroes that push Naga minion types are some of the stronger heroes available. For example, Queen Ashara and Lady Vosh are actually some of the strongest heroes in the last few patches, and they predominantly play Naga builds. It's a case where, in Battlegrounds, certain heroes so heavily are favored certain minion types that even though the minion type overall is not very good, they're still very much playable on those select heroes. There's the other case that a lot of builds combine different minion types, so even though maybe one particular minion type doesn't have a very good overall set of cards, if they have one or two good ones, that might be enough to push them into viability, into hybrid builds, into T-Master builds, or even full-on Menagerie builds. So, you know, everything comes with a grain of salt, but there are some pretty interesting new cards, mechanics, and card exclusions. We'll go over that, and I will try to be pretty quick just so you can get some idea and not have this drawn out. Alright, so without further ado, we get an amalgam on 1, but keep in mind the poisonous change does take pretty good number on amalgams. It's pretty nice to start the game with an amalgam. Patient Scout remains one of my favorite cards. We have Selfless Hero remaining, Sparring Partner for more taunt effects, Green Thumb, any kind of power that allows you to scale untyped minions has always been very strong in Battlegrounds. The Disciple's been one of my favorite cards. The Stoneborn, 6 health and taunt has been one of my favorite cards. Menagerie Mug has been one of my favorite cards. Fireworks Fanatic, I think, will actually kind of suck because it's still kind of the same card, and it's still Tavern 4. I think you'll probably need to drop the Tavern 3. The big hit with Fireworks Fanatic has been the buddies juicing it up like crazy. It's going to be a lot less of that in the coming patch. We get at least still, we get the Strong Shell Scavenger, the Tunnel Blaster, Lightfang is still there, Titus, the new Baron, is still there, Kangor is still there, Tortolan, Bran. Leroy's a big one because the biggest cards in the game for, like, you know, ending them have been Selfless, which is still there, fortunately enough. Scam-based cards, poisonous cards. Poisonous cards are very much gone, and Leroy has been really powerful at dealing with, like, Divine Shield big minions, so Leroy is still in the picture. We have this new big scaler in the neutrals, Drakari Enchanter. This is actually a real card in the game, I believe. Your end of turn effect triggered twice, so you can get like double walking fort. End of turn effects can actually mean your hero powers as well. Some hero powers trigger end of turn. For example, like the Ragnaros hero power triggers at the end of turn, so this can double your hero's effect. You have to keep mindful of that. Very, very nice effect. We have a new card here, the Boogie Monster. After you play a tier 1 minion, progress to the next tier and give your minions +1/+2. Sure. I don't know, that's kind of a weird one. Mantid Queen is still in, but it is venomous and not poisonous. Mantid Queen is going to be one of the most affected cards from the Poison to Venom change because you would regularly play it when you could give it Divine Shield. So you'd have a Divine Shield poisonous card that's like a 5/5. Now, Mantid Queen might still get Divine Shield, but it's going to be venomous, not poisonous. So it's only really going to get one attack that's any good unless you scale it, but it's a typeless minion, so it's pretty hard to scale. Uther's still in, very happy to see that. Zap is still in, very happy to see that. Overall, the neutrals are pretty interesting, I would say. Beasts do get a little bit of a shake-up, but not as big as you might think. So the biggest one is Alley Cat. There's no more Alley Cat. So no more economy cards on 1. That is a pretty big deal for most players, actually, not just the beast minion type. Mana Saber, Death Rattle, summon 2/0/1 couplings, taunt. There's going to be a few more of these like summon effects. Leapfrog is still in the game, boys. Leapfrogging with Reborn, with Monstrous Macaw, with Blanchy, with Rat Pack, with Sewer Rat. And we know Titus is in the game. So Leapfrogger builds, without even really thinking too hard, are going to be very strong. Okay, just flat out. There's no way they're not going to be. Here the beasts have +2 attack on 2. That's pretty interesting. This one's quite nice. Taunt, Death Rattle, trigger the battle cries of adjacent minions. You have to keep in mind that a Death Rattle can only be triggered in combat, and in combat, buffs don't retain on the cards. Now, with that said, some battle cry effects actually give you cards back to your hand. So, in some cases, you can utilize this for a powerful passive scaling effect, and in some cases, a powerful in-combat effect. After you summon a beast in combat, double its stats. That's going to be pretty ridiculous. I imagine that would scale with itself, and it is not a typeless scaler. It is also itself a beast, which is no small deal. Sly Raptor survives, Crocolisk is back, Bone Mare survives. I really like Bone Mare, so I'm happy to see that. Happy to see Blanchy survives. Octosari is a Tavern 6 beast. Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 tentacle. It gains +2/+2 permanently after you summon a minion in combat. How would you use this? Well, you'd probably want to give Octosari taunt, and they have taken away none of the taunt givers, which is very good. So you can give this taunt fairly easily. You get the tentacle, and then you play a bunch of Death Rattle stuff in front of it. I think it would work with pretty decent regularity, honestly. I think it would work. Gas Coiler remains, Fell Stomper remains, so beasts are going to be in pretty good shape, particularly the Leapfrogger builds. Demons. Demons have a pretty big change. They have earlier access to not taking damage from damage effects, and now they have way more damage effects. But because the damage preventers, and we're looking at this card, Soul Rewinder, after your hero takes damage, rewind it and give this +1 health. So it scales kind of like Wrathweaver, which is still in the game. It's Tavern 2. All the previous damage preventer cards have been Tavern 3, so that's actually a really big change. But if we look at a lot of the new ones, and I'm not going to go painstakingly through them, at the start of your turn, deal 1 damage to your hero. After your hero takes damage, give your other demons +1/+1. Discover a demon, deal damage to your hero equal to its tier. So, and there's a few more even. There's way more cards that deal damage to your hero as part of the demon package right now. So this card is going to be vital. I think the demon playstyle is going to be very much, if you get an early Soul Rewinder, well, you play demons, and if you don't, then you probably don't play demons. Another card that we see missing, and I'm very thankful for, is Soul Weavers. No more Soul Weavers, so thank God that crap is done. Now, in terms of the Soul Rewinder, just to kind of backtrack a little bit here, it might be a little bit confusing. Rewind the damage, what does that mean? Basically, you don't take the damage, but this is different than being immune during your turn because you need the health. For example, if you want to buy a Leeching Fellhound and you have a Soul Rewinder, it's going to rewind it, but then you actually need to have 4 health or more to be able to get it. And similarly, for example, the Imposing Guide, deal damage equal to your hero equal to its tier, so you might have to take up to 6 damage for that, so who knows. I can't imagine these things stack to heal your hero. That would be ridiculous. I don't think they're ever going to have those type of things. Demon cards that persisted. We have the Mind Muck, which I think is very cool. The Fellhound, which is the new addition, also I think is very cool. The Trickster, the Fellelemental, Legion Overseer, Jiraxxus, and Fellbat. We have the Battlemaster is a Tavern 4, but that actually doesn't really matter because usually on Tavern 4, when you first start seeing Tavern 4 cards, you haven't really taken that much health damage, and in most cases you haven't taken any health damage. So Battlemaster is honestly a little bit of a nerf, but not as plainly as you might think. So overall, a lot of the demon cards I really like are still in the game, which is very nice. And a lot of the new additions for demons have to do with cycling damage taken. So you're going to probably have these demon builds that early on scale with damage taken, and later on probably you want to move into a Fellbat strategy with some Mecha Jiraxxus effects, which I think is actually very cool, especially with consideration that stats are going to matter a lot more in the upcoming patch. Dragons. So again, we have remained a lot of the cards that I like. The only one that I think is a bit of a shame is the Red Whelp. I think the Red Whelp has a really powerful and cool disruptive effect with its blast, but the win rate of Red Whelp is honestly awful, so, you know, it is what it is. We keep the Dozy Whelp. We don't have the Crow Magum whatever thing, the 1/4-on-1, but that doesn't really matter. They've nerfed that to bits. We do still have the Smuggler, the Bronze Warden, Blazing Skyfin, Amber Guardian, Terragosa, Prize Drake. We have Nadina, Caligos, Cyborg Drake, Murazond. The General Drakasat, the one that Battle Cries stuff, is still there. Overall, the Dragon package is still very much there, and I think it's pretty cool. One of the new cards, the Upbeat mechanic, at the end of every 3 turns, get another random dragon, so that's pretty nice. At the end of your turn, give 2 attack to your minions with less attack than this. So this can be very powerful to start scaling your non-minion type cards if you're playing like a Menagerie style. Or if you have 2 of these and you constantly bounce the buff back to back, you can constantly buff your whole board potentially, which is really interesting, especially when combined with the Smuggler. And it is a Tavern 2 card, so you can easily combine it with the Smuggler. After a different friendly dragon gains attack, this also gains it, so a powerful scaling mechanism. Some heroes can really take advantage of having like really big card. Give your other dragons +8 health to start a combat effect. I don't particularly like that, but whatever, it's okay. Battlecry, give your other dragons +4 attack. Again, stats are going to matter a lot more, and dragons have very powerful stat scaling through the Nadina effect of massive Divine Shield. Disco Shuffler, also again an easy dragon. Trigger a friendly minion's Battlecry or discover a Battlecry minion. So very powerful now. It might be a lot easier to scale Caligos-based dragons, which they certainly needed it, but it might be quite good because, again, stats seem to matter quite a bit more. Elementals, we have the Nomi build is still alive. Magmalock is still there, but I believe the Taunted Tavern 4 dude that gains stats when your Elemental gains stats, that guy is gonzo. So Elementals are going to have a little bit less stats as a result of that. That was a pretty big part of it. Elemental is still in the game, which is undoubtedly going to be the best economy card to start with anytime you actually start a game. Get +1 attack for each Elemental you play, wherever this is. I don't know, it's kind of weird. If Elemental is still there, so that's very, very big for Elementals. Death Rattle, Elementals, Bob's Taverns have +2/+2 for the rest of the game. That's very cool on 4. Oh, actually, I guess we don't have the Dazzling Elemental, so that is kind of like an Elemental starter card. Kind of like the Dazzling Elemental used to function before you scaled into a Nomi build. Upbeat Upstart Taunt at the end of every 2 turns. Set this minion's health to the highest in your warband. So that can be very powerful. A card you can perhaps keep to triple, so you know you don't have to constantly cycle all of your board. You get some extra elementals with Gusty. After you sell 6 elementals, get another random elemental. Oh, and I guess that kind of replaces Ragnaros. So that's a pretty interesting one. So without Ragnaros, it's going to be a bit more direct to play elementals. You're really going to have to rely on Nomi. But there are some pretty powerful effects. So after you play an elemental, give your minions +1 attack, swap health next turn. This is an out of combat buff, so this will remain. Very powerful scaler. Gar is gone, but I think that's a pretty powerful replacement. And this is one of my favorite cards that I've seen so far. So it's a Divine Shield 8/8 elemental. This minion can triple with any elemental. So imagine you're playing like Nomi elementals. Your elementals are like 50/50s, and this upbeat thing you've had in play, you got like 2 of them. They have like 150 health because you're going off of a tripled elemental. So then you buy one of these and it's going to triple both of these and add 50 to it. You're going to have like a 350 health Divine Shield elemental. So this card with Nomi builds is absolutely crazy, and it doesn't require that much like preemptive investment. It really just works with the Nomi package, and the Nomi package is going to work about as well as before. A lot of the cards that scale Nomi, Recycling Wrath, Tavern Tempest, Elemental, you know, those are all still there. So Elemental is looking pretty good. Mechs are looking very good. Mechs actually have a really big change, but the biggest change of all is Holy Mackerel is gone. So no more of that like double Holy Mackerel completely trash your opponent who can't get through Divine Shields with like Wind Fury and Leroy effects. That's fine. A lot of the early game is the same, Pump Bot, Micro Mummy, but honestly, these have been some of the most solid Tavern 1 cards to start with in the game, so that's fine. We still have the Leaper, it is what it is. Harvest Golem is still there. But we have another few additions in the early game. At the end of your turn, gain +1/+1. It's a magnetic effect, so you can put this on an early mech to constantly scale it, which is a really powerful effect. Magnetic, at the start of your turn, gain 1 extra gold. Oh my god, it's absolutely insane. You know, mechs have advantage in economy, which is crazy to me. Annoya module persists. Avenge 4, get a random magnetic mech. Now, this has a similar stat line and replaces Grease Bot. So instead of gaining the stats when your Divine Shields drop, you're gaining the stats probably a bit slower, but again, some of the magnetic effects are like economy-based, so that is debatable. In my opinion, in a much cooler way, very much like that change. War Gear is still there. Utility Drone at the end of your turn, give your mains +1/+1 for each magnetization that they have. So you have this whole new like magnetization counter type of build. Dr. Boombox is still there in full effect. Omega Buster is still there for the scam mech builds. Foe Reaper is still there with much stronger magnetic effects, I should add, for the Menagerie builds. We also have this, whenever you magnetize a minion, it also magnetizes into this, so the whole magnetization minion type is still there, and Mecha Jiraxxus drops in with powerful added effects, again, through magnetization. So I think Mex is perhaps the coolest reworked minion type. Unfortunately, it's gonna be, I think it's the last to be added in terms of the slow rollout, but yeah, I'll have to wait. Murloc. So Murlocs are not getting that whole like toxin poisonous thing. They got this guy that just has venomous. Okay, so you gotta kind of, you know, see Murlocs in a different light. Murlocs are not going to be put a bunch of health, give it poisonous, laugh to first place. It's not going to be like that. Doesn't mean Murlocs are going to be bad. They might actually be on top, and I'll show you guys why I think they actually might be. But it's going to be a different playstyle. The stats are going to matter. So, you know, Swamp Striker is still there. It didn't change, except it kind of did, because now we don't have poisonous effects, and instead we have more ways to play more Murlocs. So Swamp Striker is going to be your highest attack Murloc, and that actually matters now. So that's pretty good. That is remaining. Tad is still there, one of the most powerful economy cards in the early game, but it is a 2/2 instead of a 2/4. Interesting that they decided to change that. Upbeat Flutist. At the end of every 2 turns, give a random minion in your hand +9 health. So that is a pretty powerful effect. And there are a few in-hand mechanics that Murlocs have acquired. We have the Skyfin, the Honcho is back, Cold Light Seer, Primal Fin Lookout is still there. Scourfin, Death Rattle, give a random minion in your hand +5/+5. This is a strange effect, because a Death Rattle can only be triggered in combat. Buffs in combat do not persist, but because it is a hand buff, it wouldn't make sense that it wouldn't persist, right? But who knows? It might not persist, because if we look at some of the other Murloc cards, Death Rattle summon the highest health minion from your hand this combat only, so that would have synergy with this. It just seems really crappy. Like, if this wouldn't persist in, like, after the combat, it's kind of bad. So I think it will persist, but we'll have to probably see how it works out when the patch is up. While this is in your hand, after you play a Murloc, gain +3/+2. So you can keep this in your hand and get it really big. Maybe you just keep it forever, and then you get it out through a Baskill. The Venomous effect. Venomous Death Rattle, give a friendly Murloc Venomous. So Murlocs is still going to be poisonous little bastards, just, you know, not poisonous, venomous. Bagurgle is still there, Magmaloc is still there. Start of combat, gain the stats of all minions in your hand. This is potentially really, really powerful, because if you are floating like a couple of these Bream counters, you know, this can be an enormous card. And again, stats matter. And we still have Young Murkide. I don't know if I think his stats are about the same. But hear me out, hear me out. I think that the Baskill is the real winner here. Maybe, you know, for Murlocs, there's going to be different ways to play this kind of holding in hand mechanic. But here's how I see it. If I'm playing a Menagerie build, and I imagine the golden version of this is going to be 2 minions, or if you just have a Baron, it's just going to be more minions. You just hold Leroy's. Leroy is the craziest scam card in the game next patch. So if you're holding like 1 or 2 Leroys,
You are operating at optimal
yeah,
performance.
this can just be a pile of stats that death rattles into multiple Leroys. So that is probably going to hit up in some endgame builds, I would imagine. So anyway. Nagas. Nagas have a few changes. The early game stuff is still the same with the mini Myrmidon, Shell Collectors, fantastic card to start with. We have a new card, Riffer. Give a minion stats equal to your Tavern tier next turn. That can be pretty decent. Still have the Taunt, still have the Lava Lurker, still have the Snail Cavalry. I believe the Brute was a 4, now is a 3 with lower stats. The Zesty Shaker is an interesting one. Once per turn, after you cast a spellcraft spell on this, add a new copy of it to your hand. So that is a pretty powerful effect. We still have the Pashmar, Puffer Quill, Corrupted Myrmidon, Deep Blue Crooner, I think it is. You give a minion +1/+1 until next turn, improve your future Deep Blues. So I don't know. It's a Tavern 4. How improved are they really going to be? I don't know. That seems kind of weak. But the Silent Swimmer, holy crap. Spellcraft, give a minion +3/+5 and Stealth until next turn. Now, if we rewind all the way back to Beast builds, one of the least affected builds the next patch is going to be Leapfrog. If you're playing a Leapfrog builds and you're kind of like 1v1 last match situation, giving your Titus Rivendare Stealth for the final rounds is just ridiculous. You probably can't lose with that build if you give Titus Stealth. So I don't know if that's going to be an oversight, but that seems a little busted to me. Endgame, we're looking at the same type of stuff, but that's fine. I think the Naga endgame was pretty cool. Pirates. Pirates has some really big changes, okay? I'm just going to straight out show you guys. There ain't no Hogger, okay? I really like Hogger as a mechanic, but I really hated Hogger with the fact that people who use the firewall disconnect or even closed and restarted their game to skip the turn timer. You know, it is an exploit, okay? It's easy to do, but it's obviously an exploit. And people who would use like the Windows firewall software to kind of cut their connection in and out to gain like a full extra minute or 2 minutes at the start of a turn. If you have infinite economy, gaining extra time at the start of your turn is really game breaking, and I really hated how that was so abused for so long. So removing Hogger, I'm happy with it overall. We still have Scallywag, we have the Southsea Busker, Battlecry, gain 1 gold next turn. So on turn 1, this is going to be like kind of bizarre. It might be pretty good with some strategies where you stay on 1 until 7 gold, possibly. Thorn Captain is still there. It's an interesting card, but never really made it to late game builds. And the Rip Snarl is nerfed, but now it's Tavern 2. Never friendly pirate attacks, gives it +3 attack. The Gambler is still there. I'm happy about that. Corpse Refiner is still there. Happy about that. Gunpowder Courier. After you spend 5 gold, give your pirates +1 attack. 5 gold left. Bloodsail Cannon. This card is actually at one point in time in Battleground, so we got a lot of attack buffs. No health buffs. After you gain gold, gain +1/+1. So I don't know if this triggers like once for free at the start of each turn, or if it just triggers on each individual counter afterwards. It's really hard to see how good this would be, but from the look of it, this is replacing the Gold Grubber. And honestly, I don't know if it's going to be better than a Gold Grubber, so that might be a bit of a nerf as well. Blade Collector. Look at this card carefully, ladies and gentlemen. Also damages the minions next to whomever this attacks. So it is a Tavern 4 card, a 3/2, and a pirate. But pirates get a lot of attack scaling. And if you missed it, and I didn't call it because I was waiting for this moment, Cave Hydra is dead. There is no Cave Hydra. Blade Collector.
In the time you have. You are operating at optimal performance. You displayed a great deal of power during that performance. This cannot be done alone. It would be wise to accept aid from these minions. This cannot be done alone. It would be wise to accept aid from these minions.
And Foe Reaper are the only two remaining pure cleave minions in Battlegrounds. So, you know, pirates, honestly, they look pretty bad. This is kind of weak in my opinion. But you know, you don't have to play a full pirate build, and probably Patches, who gets tons of free pirates and never going to see anyone else play full pirate builds, Patches is still probably going to be pretty good, but the Blade Collector being the most accessible cleave card available for most builds, especially most Menagerie builds, I think a lot of builds are going to incorporate it and maybe some of the other cards that easily buff it, like Peggy, like a few of the other cards. Lovesick Balladist. Give a pirate +1 health for each gold spent this turn. That's a very powerful effect. So, you know, the gold economy is a bit more gradual, not entirely centered on Hogger, but we get a lot more stat buffs now with pirates. Vanessa +2/+1 permanent attack. At the start of your turn, gain 1 gold repeat for each other friendly pirate. You know, huge economy boost. This is kind of the Hogger replacement, but, you know, who are we kidding? It doesn't really replace Hogger. At the end of every 2 turns, make a random pirate in your hand golden. Wow. Very powerful effect. After you spend a gold, get a random pirate. So we still have that economy. It's just not centered entirely on a single card. And I think our Quillbore, oh no, we have Quillbore and Undead. Quillbore! So Quillbore also have a new type of, you know, mechanic identity in a way. All the early game Quillbore is basically the same. Thorncaller is now a 2 instead of a 3. I actually kind of like Thorncaller as a 3, so I'm probably really going to like it as a 2. It no longer has the battle cry effect, but I think that's fine. Bannerboar still a 3. Moon Bacon Jazzer. Okay. For the rest of the game, your blood gems give an extra 1 health. Holy moly.